Hey guys, how is it going? I have Kat joining us today. I'm gonna find her and send now. As you join, make sure that you can hear me. Tell me if you can hear me okay. It's always so hard to judge the feedback on here when I'm trying to get the phone to start working. Danny, how are you? I haven't heard from you in a minute. We need to connect. Talk about all the stuff you're doing to change the world over in your area. If you guys don't know Danny, Lake Life Danny, Dani, you've got to follow her. She's making some big... See if I can get Kat to join. Kat, you should see the notification. Thanks, Danny. Hey!
Hi.
How are you?
Great. How are you?
Doing good. I love your short hair as my hair, like, half's poofy, half's...
Girl, own it. I miss my long hair.
I feel like when I had short hair, it was so much more work, so more power to
You're
you.
right. You're right. It is.
Yeah, you have to care a lot, and I don't have that much care.
Oh,
So tell me, how are you doing?
I'm doing amazing.
Oh, Mel's on. Mel, I was just talking about how my hair doesn't look as cute when you don't do it. So,
Hi, Danny.
Kat, I'm so excited because I know that we had to reschedule at some point and all the schedules. I don't know if there's any other mommies on right now, but like summer has been impossible for everybody to schedule up. It's definitely like switching the routine. I feel like by the time we get all of our routines back in order, it's gonna be insane. We're like gonna finally get back in order, and then summer's gonna be over. We'll just switch again, but we'll power through all of that. Hey guys, thank you for joining us. Kat, I wanted to take a minute because I know that we've been talking back and forth. Kat is one of my people that's always like in my messages. We're always talking back and forth, and she gives me some really good reminders. And I feel like I need her in my life all the time because I'll share things out and she'll respond to me, and I'm like, I needed to hear what you had to say about that because I needed a little bit of a check and just check in on me and make sure that everything's going well. She has some amazing views when it talks to just how she processes the information because she's just so far, in my opinion, so far ahead of me in some of the ways that she picks up on things. I need it, guys. I'm always looking for people who help me and that I lean on, and I would definitely say this is one of them here. Why don't you go ahead and just introduce yourself and tell them a little bit about you and why you're on?
Sure. So my name's Kat, and I was in a marriage for 14 years total, and fled at 12 years into that marriage. I fled with two children that had actually already been back at their grandparents when I fled, fled and absolutely had nothing, and started my life over at the age of 35 with absolutely nothing.
That's big too, because I think sometimes just the idea of starting completely over is paralyzing and we don't want to do it. And sometimes we want to do it and we have no idea how to do it.
Exactly. Exactly. It's very paralyzing, but I think at the end of the day, I knew I had to do it for my children, and that was my catapult. Was a girlfriend bringing to my attention the situation that I was in, and then laying in bed and realizing that I had two children that were watching me, and what would I do if they were in that situation? And that to me was just the fuel to my fire, and no looking back.
I've got a question about that too, because I was having some conversations about, we're all about the mentorship and having other women help identify for others. You're able to say, I don't know that this is happening to you, but this is what happened to me, and I see something or something's triggering me to say this to you, and are just getting out of our shell and saying something and being that person. But it makes me go back to the constant, like, but they will never listen to me, or who am I to say this, who am I to say that. But what you just said there is somebody brought something up to you, and then when you were by yourself alone laying down at night, then it started processing more. What was your reaction when she first kind of brought this to you and was talking to you about your situation?
Before I go into that, I just want to say I know a lot of people in this situation as friends don't want to talk about it. It's uncomfortable and they put their friendship out on the line. And my theory, you guys, is put your nose where you don't think it belongs when it comes to something like this. This is a big deal, and it's okay if you put a friendship on the line because your friend deserves to deserves better. So in saying that, one of my best friends knew I was having problems. She knew the ins and outs of the entire relationship and actually went to her counseling appointment and came home with a stalking brochure for me. And she just said, you know, I just want you to read this. This is just something that my therapist gave me that I thought that you should have. And so I did, and I read it, and to this day I still have it. 6 years later, it means a lot to me that she would do that. But I think stalking was such a big thing that I didn't feel like I was being stalked. And then the more I read it, the more I realized I was being stalked. I was being stalked by my cell phone. I was being stalked by my emails that were being read, my social media, my whereabouts. Everywhere I went, my abuser showed up. I would go to lunch with my children. My abuser would show up and not know where I was. I had not told them where I was going. I would go running and exercise on my own, and my abuser would show up in the car. So I was being stalked, and that was kind of the eye-opening experience that I needed to get out.
That's incredible. I like that you still have it too, because it now, you know, at the time, I'm sure the feelings about it were a little bit different than how it is today. Now you're almost like treasuring this brochure that
Ooh,
helped
I do.
catapult everything. That's
It took me
crazy.
up. It does.
And it's interesting too. Like I try not to be too morbid on these things, but I can't help it. Watching the news lately has me completely cringing. It makes me more passionate about what we're doing. It makes me want to always be on the soapbox about this. But if we are so afraid to lose our friends over saying something, we could lose our friends. You know,
Absolutely.
there's completely different levels to this, and we get so nervous about them saying, you know what, I think your nose is in the wrong place and I don't want anything to do with you, versus, you know, how am I going to feel if I don't say something and something does happen?
It is a
You
big
know.
deal. Just this week, I've actually had two women in my life from my past, one from 18 years ago and one from when I lived across the country, come to me and message me. And one was that this individual had left her spouse. And this is not the first time she's fled him. The second one was that she was terrified to leave her spouse because she knew that he was going to kill her. And so that's why it's so crucial to stick your nose in people's business, give them the options that are out there, the resources, and don't put yourself in danger. I think that's the biggest thing, but to give them those options. And you know, always meet, if you want to meet them in a safe place, a public place that's there's a lot of people around.
Mhm. Absolutely. Now, I know we didn't start this conversation yet, but I know when we talked, we were talking a lot about the stalking and the emotional abuse.
Mm-hmm.
Could you tell us a little bit about how your emotional abuse actually impacted some of your physical health?
Absolutely. So, with keeping it a secret, with me being abused, my family didn't know. My friends didn't know. The only people that knew was one person, and it was my best friend who lived next door. It was a best friend. It was first her, and then it was two other of my closest best friends that did not live there. And I was so sick from holding this as a secret that I was constantly ill. I had a hysterectomy. I had bronchitis. I had MRSA twice that I had to have emergency surgery for. And it was just one thing after the other with this health. And I was working out every day. I was, for all intents purposes, a very healthy person. And it consistently broke my body down from the stress. And I ended up in the hospital. And I just remember going to the ER and I could not move. My doctor, I had ended up going to a doctor when I realized I had abuse, therapist. He sent me to a psychiatrist who could look at my medications. And she prescribed something for me, and it ended up not working with my body. And I was literally being poisoned from it. I could not move. And so when I went to the ER, I just remember my abuser, just the doctor, it was like a twilight zone, saying, oh, I'm sure she just has the flu, and I couldn't even fight for myself. And just remembering him being more thrilled with the fact that he didn't have to pay for a copay if I left then and there without tests being done or anything. And I literally laid there on my back with tears coming out of my eyes, knowing that I would do anything for somebody I loved to figure out what was going on. And he wasn't. And so that was kind of the beginning of the end of when I realized I need to get out. And, this has followed me since I left. Right before I fled, I got bronchitis. I came home, and just as recently as 2 months ago, I was diagnosed with 2 autoimmune diseases, one of them being lupus. And so the abuse, it racks your body emotionally, physically, in every way. And as you're in such a fight or flight when you're in the abuse, that once you get out, you realize how much it's actually taken a toll on your body with your adrenal glands and everything. So that's where I stand with that. Was diagnosed with these autoimmune diseases, but like with anything before, I'm not going to let it define who I am. I've been through so much that I'm fighting it with nutrition and feeling amazing.
That's awesome. Yeah, and I think sometimes too, we're always thinking about emotional abuse, and everything gets thought of in these bubbles, that it's just emotional abuse. And one thing that irks me, guys, about emotional abuse is the way that people describe it as just say harsh things. They're just overly opinionated with you. You need a tougher skin. You need this. It is so much more than that. And psychologically, it is so much more impactful than the way we put it. Sticks and stones will break my bones, but words will never hurt me. That is not true. There's so much more with emotional abuse. And we like to, well, we don't, but in society, we oftentimes find that people try to discount the emotional abuse because it's not physical. You're not seeing it. But we know that everything that happens to us psychologically also impacts us, internally, and our health. Beyond even our mental health, it can impact our physical health, which is why I think it's so important that people hear what you went through and what you've dealt with to see kind of how that changes.
It is lasting for sure.
And, I don't get to talk a lot about my story. I try to tell you guys what I can, but I do, of course, have a really little one. So I have to be careful just because of the fact that I can always be brought back into court, and I'm always doing the court battle and dance. And if you are too, write to me, because I'm totally there for you as well. But one of the main things that I would deal with was I could get a phone call, and the second I'd see that name on my phone, because there was so much going on, even when, we weren't physically together, the physical abuse was one part, but then there was also, the emotional abuse and the things that would happen. Even just from a phone call, I would lose all feeling in my face. That was my stress reaction. I'd feel like I was going to pass out every now and then. I would pass out. And there was truly nothing else that they could identify being wrong. It's just my stress reaction. My friends and I joke about it now, but it's like Alyssa's stress reaction is to play dead. My whole body's just like done. Try to impact me now. But it's crazy, because as soon as we left, it stops. And that was one of the things that was constantly used against me. Like, well, you have this going on, you have that going on, you're unfit to be a mom. So try to leave, and I will get that child, and you'll never see that child again. This child, obviously I still have. But it's important to realize that some of these things that we're so afraid of, some of these threats, are actually things that they're causing, that they're using against us, that are completely blatant lies that aren't going to hold up at all. But that's a scary decision to make for sure. I think the conversation about stalking is really important too, because one of the things you said was that you weren't actually telling him where you were going, but it was so hard for you to identify that it was stalking because you were in a marriage and you were married, and it's kind of one of those things. Can you dive into that a little bit deeper, and especially like how it was hard for you to identify some of the abusive things because of being married and what you consider normal and common in marriage.
Absolutely. So I grew up in a Christian home. I was, I was taught that you marry for better or for worse.
Mhm.
And so I really hadn't come to grips with the fact that I was in an abusive marriage. I really questioned myself, like most victims do. And as far as abuse went, towards the end, just sexual abuse. And I think people don't talk about that just because it's so hard for them. I'm more than happy to answer anybody's questions with that. And sexual abuse is anything that is against your will. Um, I was questioned 3 to 4 times a day, at least, of accused of cheating. If I didn't have sex 3 to 4 times a day, or if it was 5 times a day or 2 times a day, it was always up to him on what number, how many times he wanted to have sex. And if I wouldn't do that with him, then I was having an affair. And so I really didn't realize until I fled that that was sexual abuse. I
Mhm.
think and that's something that I talk about a lot, just because you're married does not mean that you have to have sex with them when they want it. That's your body and that's your
Mhm.
rules. So that's a big thing. And coming to grips with that, I think, was mind blowing for me, just because as a spouse, that was something that was ingrained into me, just respecting my spouse. But when you look at it, my
Mhm.
spouse was not respecting me and my body. So that was a big deal.
Absolutely. I think that's really important too. And we're seeing that more as a triggering topic now in the media, right? Especially around the idea of can you be raped within a marriage? And you're kind of taking that stand, and I love it. I love to be able to open up and talk about that because I know so many women are dealing with that, and even men too. We know men deal with that as well,
Absolutely.
where it's just we've never wanted to talk about it before, and we're finally able to break through some of those walls and talk about it. And if we don't talk about it, as uncomfortable as all these conversations are, and they're dividing people, but they have to be had because otherwise we're not going to make any progress with them.
Well,
So
and you
I
don't
think
want
it's incredible.
you're not alone. Everybody, many
Yes.
people have dealt with this. Many people don't want to speak about it. I think I am at a point in my life that I'm done, and I'm done staying quiet. I've always been a very outspoken person. So when it comes to this topic, I'm more than happy. Even if nobody wants to talk about it, I'm happy to send me an IM. I'm more than happy to talk with you about it and get you to resources that can help for sure.
I love that. And tell them really quick before we move on, how can they IM you?
Um, Feel free to just send me a message on here, um, Peaches and Pearls, and I'm more than happy to speak with you through DM.
Awesome. I'll have her repeat that again and at the end too for you guys, but make sure you are following her and you get connected to her because she is such a great resource and someone just so inspiring in her walk past, the abuse and domestic violence. Just watching her rebuild is amazing. There's one thing that, you spoke a little bit about was your girls and moving on and, staying for them and then leaving for them. And I wanted to ask a little bit because we do have some parents around, and I get a lot of questions around how do you make sure that you're implementing and teaching the right things so that they don't experience the same hell that you've went through or become the same, person that you fled from. So what are you doing to teach your daughters about abuse and breaking that cycle?
It's a great question. I think first and foremost is to get yourself, as the victim, involved in a community of women and men that have recovered from this, that are it's a constant process. It takes a long time. It took
Looks like our audio is trying to reconnect here. Give it just one more second. Oh, we're gonna have to reconnect with Kat really quick. By His Grace Realtor. I love that. The 360 exchange. I am so frustrated. I was going to come out on Wednesday and I cannot find a babysitter. So I'm going to have to reschedule another time, but so excited to have been able to talk to you. We have so much going on in the Orlando area, guys. If you are not in the Orlando area, then I am so sad because we're really starting to pick up in the local community, making sure that we're able to get our word out there. I feel like we are one of the few nonprofits that really struggles with getting more local, but we've done great, on this larger scale because of you, because you've been there, you've been willing to talk and open up about your experiences and what you're dealing with, and it is so, so, so important. I'm trying real quick to get Kat back on with us. Let me see if I can get her so that we can hear her answer. It's so important to talk about our children, about what we've went through, but then there's also some fear too, making sure that when we talk about what we went through, we are also not going to re-traumatize them. And it's hard too, especially if we co-parent with them and the other person is their parent. That can be so, so difficult. Oh, I see you guys now can see that I wear yoga pants and have my legs all up every time we're on camera. Get this back up here. There you go.
My
How
iPhone
are you?
pointed.
You hear us now?
Okay, so you had a
Oh,
question.
that's
I'll go
okay.
back
I
to
was
your
just
question.
telling them they
So,
can see everything now. I think our audio is still trying to pick you back up. Let me see here. Can you hear me? I think, I think my audio is like cutting out on you. Give it one more second. We're seeing the spinny thing over your face while it tries to reconnect, but you look amazing. I'm gonna have to screenshot this for you. You look awesome in this picture still that it's got of you. What's my face actually look like? All right, guys. It looks like we lost Kat. I'm so sad because I know that the answer to that question is so good. Maybe we'll do a story takeover and let her answer that question for you guys. But please, 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 Peaches, Pearls, make sure that you're following her so that you can talk to her. And two, if you relate to any of these topics, if anything stood out to you as a big aha moment, a big wow, please let us know. Tell us in the comments and share this out. We want to make sure that we can get the message out to everybody. And again, you might not be at that place where you're willing to take that step and interact with somebody who you suspect or worry might be in one of these situations. But the easiest thing that you can do is share a video. Let them know that you're thinking of them, even if you don't call them out for it. Every time that we are able to spread that message, you have the opportunity to save someone's life, change the trajectory of their lives, change the trajectory of their kids' lives. We want to make sure that we can break this cycle, but it does take all of us doing these little steps, hitting that share button, hitting the heart, tagging somebody that you think needs to hear this message today, even if it's just to say, hey, I just watched this video with Kat, who's an absolutely inspiring, wonderful person. Take a listen to this. Oops. Let me switch you guys back around. Let's do that. It's a tiny step, but it makes a huge difference. Kat's trying to call back in one more time. See if we can get her. If you guys have your own webcast, podcast, go ahead and put it here in the comments. No worries about no promos. I like to see what you guys are doing. I like to know how you guys are taking your passions and bringing them to real life and using it to support your families and hit your goals and reach new highs. I love to hear about it. So make sure you send those to us. I've got to quit pressing buttons so quickly, guys, because you just see like how messy the other side of this office is. All right, Kat, I'm having a hard time getting it to connect, but I've got some ideas because I know that you have some really good answers, and I want to make sure everybody gets to hear them. Try this one more time. Feel like it's the internet connection or something just keeps knocking us off. I hear you. I don't see
I'm
you
so
yet.
sorry.
There you are.
I'm literally squatting in the corner outside of work, but my iPhone overheated. But to go back to what you were saying, you're asking, how do you keep that from happening again with your children? Just get yourself involved with other victims. That helps boost your morale. There's a lot of classes around for individuals that have been through it. I know ARMS is a great one, ARMS. They're nationwide. So getting yourself involved gets yourself to heal. Once you start healing, you start emotionally, mentally getting back on track with your children as well as yourself. And when you are at a better place mentally, you're going to exude and demand that respect, and pass it on to your children. Your children are going to emulate what they see in you. And so demanding respect is huge for me. I have taught my children that. They're girls. I always tell them to have high standards, and while it might seem unrealistic to many people, it's keeping their standards high and having that ingrained in their brains that they don't deal with anything. Life's too short. I tell them that they don't need to settle for anything. I have that for myself as well. Don't settle. If you're not happy, life's too short. Move on. I mean, we're great. Every person's different. Every person's created in a different way, and somebody's gonna love that and treat you like a gem. And so that's my biggest thing, is that I teach my girls is to not settle, and make sure that they're involved with great people.
I love that. I love that. For sure. I think staying involved and finding that support system for yourself is so important too. And I know that you've been helping others a lot. And I think that's one of those topics that we don't get to hit on enough. Is how healing can come through helping others. Could you tell us a little bit about how you started helping others after you left and what that meant for your healing journey?
Sure. I think first of all, I just had to get into a place, and I just want to tell my story. I was the All-American person. Everybody thought I had this perfect life. My porch was perfect. I had the Martha Stewart everything. And I was hiding something so big and evil that nobody knew about. And so the more I told my story, the more I had people come to me. I actually had my aunt, who's in her 50s, started her life over as a so it's just me telling my story, and through that, through old friendships I have, through people I've known, they feel comfortable enough to come to me, and I just give them the resources that I now have that I didn't have before, realizing that there is so much out there and so many ways for the state to help you, and there's so many centers out there to help, and people want to help, and there's, don't think of the big picture at that moment. If you're needing to flee and figure all the rest out later, because your life's more important than your valuables. So, what you see is valuable. So, in telling my story, I've ended up helping others, and I just feel like it's a calling. I feel like that I'm supposed to tell my story for a reason, and I have no shame in my story. I know that it's helped build character and me a better person, and I'm happy to help people with that.
I love that. And it's so important to find the ways to connect because it helps us move forward. And I love what you're doing with your story, and especially just thinking about, the background that you had and how perfect things were, that it doesn't always fit the normal conception of what abuse looks like or what an abused woman would look like. And it's one of, my big pet peeves. I feel like I've had multiple pet peeves today. Sorry, guys. I must be pet peevy today. But, it's just, we have this preconceived notion of what an abuse victim should look like. And therefore, I feel like we lose so much ability to help people because we've got kind of this blinder on of what we're expecting to see versus waiting and seeing what is right in front of us sometimes. I think, too, when we talk about abused men, I think that's a huge problem in abused men is we just still have this preconceived notion that, a man is masculine and domineering and never gets abused, and it's just not the truth. And it makes it hard when we as a society put that kind of filter on everything. It makes it hard to reach out. It makes it hard to make a difference. And it makes it, these taboo things that we don't want to talk about make it hard to actually impact and break cycles that we know are happening, but we just don't like to talk about them. So I think it's really important. And it's important for what we do on this page too, right? We get a lot of people who they feel this passion, there's this burning, there's this fire inside that they want to go help other people. And they know that